Very much, and it really is a pleasure to be able to speak to the CLA again. My name is David Dufreight, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. There we go. Everybody can see that?
Yes, we sure can.
Great, fantastic. Again, my name is Dave Dufreight. I am on faculty with the Texas A&M School of Public Health, and I am also the Associate Director of the High Plains and Intermountain Center for Agricultural Health and Safety that is headquartered at Colorado State University. And so I still continue to do research with Colorado State and High Cause, specifically in the world of ag worker health and safety. And so I was asked to provide a presentation, a short presentation on silage safety today. And so I'm going to go through some of the hazards that are associated with silage storage facilities and some resources as well. And so why are we talking about silage safety? I'm just looking at this silage storage area here. We can see a number of different hazards. And we're going to talk about those hazards, and we're going to talk about some prior incidents that have led to injuries as well as fatalities. Silage storage facilities continue to be a source of injury and fatalities in the agriculture sector, and I'm going to go through some of those reasons why. Before I do that, I want to give credit to Dr. Keith Bolson, and a lot of the material that I am presenting in this presentation came from Dr. Bolson. Dr. Bolson passed away a few years back, but his part of his research and his outreach and his passion was addressing this issue of silage safety. And so he put out this really a very nice reference paper that talks about the safety considerations of silage storage areas. And I would refer you to this. This was put out back in 2018 by the American Dairy Science Association in the Journal of Dairy Science. And so much of what I'm presenting here, I sourced from Dr. Bolson. And so what is commonly recognized when dealing with silage storage, there are 6 main hazards, and we're going to go through all 6 of these. These are encountered in managing silage and bunker silos, as well as drive-over piles. And these hazards put human life at risk. And those are tractor or truck rollovers, run over by entanglement in machinery, falls from height, crushing by an avalanche, or what we refer to as a silage avalanche, or collapsing silage, and then also silage gases, which many people do not routinely recognize or identify, and then also complacency or fatigue. And so let's first talk or address the first hazard, and that involves tractor rollover. And in ag forestry, the ag forestry sector, tractor rollovers have accounted for about 50% of the annual 250 tractor-related fatalities that are reported within the U.S. And that probably does not capture all of them because they are not often reported in regular mechanisms of reporting fatalities. And it's because of just the structure of the machinery. Tractors are top heavy. And then when you combine that with driving over these silage piles, it puts these at an angle and at an increased risk of rolling over. Tractors should have rollover protective structures because they provide a zone of protection around the operator. And when those rollover protection is combined with wearing a functioning seatbelt when it is engaged, rollover protective structures prevent the tractor operator from being thrown from the protective zone or even being crushed. When you're dealing with silage bunkers, you should have, or it is recommended, that sight rails should be installed on all above ground walls. And the purpose being that these rails indicate the location of the wall, especially during inclement weather or during nighttime activities. It's not intended, these walls are not intended to hold an overturning tractor. They are strictly there to indicate the side confines of a silage bunker. So another aspect that we notice is that you never should fill silage above the top of these walls. And this is a common practice that I see whenever I'm out on dairy farms or in other livestock feeding operations, that they try to pack in as much as they can. And oftentimes the silage level, it rises above the top of the wall. And that is not a good scenario. And so you can see here, this image, a tractor going up above on this silage packed area, and you have the sidewall there, and you start to see here that the silage is encroaching above the level of that wall. You can see the possibility or the increased risk of this tractor possibly tipping over or rolling over the edge of this wall, especially during times when visibility is low. Or the walls are not adequately reinforced to withstand the pressures and the stress that might be imposed on it from a tractor rolling over in close proximity to the wall. So that's a common practice. The second hazard involves tractors or a tractor runover or entanglement. And this just does not apply to silage storage facilities only. It is good practice that all machine guards and shields should be maintained and installed, and those are to protect the operator from all moving parts on a tractor. And so that includes any possible power takeoffs. All power takeoffs should have a cover on them to prevent entanglement by a worker that may come in close proximity. Non-workers, non-tractor or machine operators should stay away from the high traffic areas where this machinery is operating. Never allow people on foot. There should be rules in place as part of a safety management system that anyone on foot should not come close to this type of machinery because of the inherent risk of moving parts. The third hazard that is commonly recognized on these silage storage facilities or areas are falls from heights. And you can see from these images here that oftentimes workers need to go up on top, either to put on tarps, weatherproofing tarps and tires, or to come close to the edge of the silage pile to retract the tarp for a silage rake to access the edge of the silage. This is not a good situation because you can see how high these silage piles can be. Oftentimes they are too high, and that increases the risk for falls. And so I would throw this out there. If you're looking for an OSHA standard, OSHA requires fall protection in construction or in general industry, for that matter, for anyone working at 4 feet above. That is an error there. It should just say general industry. Construction is a little higher, but dairy and livestock operations fall under the general industry sector, and anything above 4 feet, a worker should have fall protection. Employers must provide guardrails, safety nets, or any other personal fall arrest systems to prevent the workers from falling off of the overhead work area. So this is really key. And so the issue, let me go back to slides forward. How does a worker get up there, and how do you protect the worker from falling over the edge of the silage pile, or in the event of a silage avalanche, prevent them from getting involved in the avalanche and falling down with the silage? There was a case in Kansas several years ago where a worker was on top of a silage pile, and the wind was so strong that it blew the worker off the edge, and unfortunately the worker died. So that is a recognized hazard. High winds in these environments, when you have a worker on top, they could be blown off the edge of these silage bunkers. So how do you get the tarps off? And this is something that I have wrestled with. What is an adequate solution to pull the tarp off without coming too close to the edge of the silage edge? So I would recommend that you maintain a minimum safe distance from the edge of the silage pile when pulling tarps. And I know that I have recommended, and I've also seen several dairy farms employ these extended rakes or hooks. And so that way they can have an extended hook 10 feet or longer that can reach to the edge, pull back the tarp, expose the silage for it so it can be retrieved by machinery. That is one option. Another option is to somehow tether a worker with a fall suppression harness with a cable that extends all the way to the other side and down to the ground to keep them from falling over. That is one option, but something needs to be considered to not only recognize the hazard of falls, but then also to prevent the worker from falling in whatever situation, high winds or a silage avalanche or what have you. And that brings me to the fourth hazard, silage avalanche. And in my 20 years of working in agricultural health and safety, mostly in dairy operations, I continue to hear of fatalities related to a silage avalanche. And I put on here, feed out faces are unstable when they are not packed down adequately, and avalanches cannot be predicted in advance. And this is a source, as I said, it's a source of many fatalities. And it's because workers are on foot and they often need to or go up to the edge of the silage to retrieve a sample for analysis. And you can see that taking place here. Never ever should a worker be on foot at the edge of the silage face. In fact, it is recommended that workers should never stand closer to the face than 3 times its height. And I recommend that safety vests be working when working around the face. In fact, I recommend that all workers on any type of agriculture operation be wearing high visibility clothing, especially during inclement weather or during nighttime, because uh, people in machinery, especially in dark conditions, low visibility conditions, oftentimes cannot see workers during those environments. But I'll explain here why I recommend why high visibility safety vests are particularly recommended when working around silage piles. Drive over piles should not be filled any higher than the uploading equipment can reach. And this is why oftentimes dairy farms employ what they call a silage rake. And you see that in this image on the bottom right-hand corner. Under no circumstances should workers be in the front bucket of a front loader, like you see in the mid image slide or the middle image here. That is a big red flag, simply because the hydraulics could fail, causing the front loader to collapse, or in the event of a silage avalanche itself. That's never a good situation. So, like I said, I recommend high visibility safety vests for all workers. And why do I say this? Why do I bring this to your attention during a silage safety? This is just one newspaper clipping of a silage collapse that claimed the life of a feed inspector. I think this may have been up in Wisconsin or the Minnesota, one of the Midwestern states. This was back in 2018. But if you look at the color of the silage during certain times of the day, it oftentimes is the same color as a common Carhartt jacket. And this was the situation of a fatality in New Mexico several years ago involving a silage avalanche. They could not find the worker under the collapsed silage for 30 minutes. And unfortunately, the worker succumbed to their injuries, but they could not find him because he was not wearing high visibility clothing. So I always recommend anytime any worker is on foot on a agriculture, livestock, or any other type of farming operation, they should always be wearing some form of high visibility colors. The fifth hazard involves silage gases. And many people don't or forget or do not know that there are numerous gases, including nitric oxide, and carbon dioxide, that they are produced during the first 2 to 3 weeks of harvesting, filling, as well as ensiling. When contacted with air, nitrous oxide changes to nitrogen dioxide, and it's a very toxic vapor, and it can produce a sudden death. Highest levels of nitrogen dioxide are usually present during the first 24 to 72 hours after forage is put into a silo. And dangerous levels can persist up to 3 weeks. The reason I say all this is that all workers who work in the machinery around the silage, or any workers on foot, they need to be trained and be made aware of the hazards associated with these silage gases. And I would even bring to your attention that wrapped silage bales are included in this hazard. Wrapped silage that can also emit gases because the fermentation process, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, along with volatile organic compounds like ethanol and ethyl acetate. Never cut into a bale of silage without proper ventilation. Workers need to be aware of that. If a yellow, brown haze or strong bleach-like smell is present, it may indicate a nitrous oxide presence. And so the worker needs to be aware to move immediately away from the area and allow the covered bale to ventilate properly. And then lastly is I would mention complacency and fatigue. And fatigue is a particular interest to me in my research. I like to investigate how fatigue not only affects a worker's health and safety, but then also their performance on the job. Fatigue can lead to human error, especially during the long hours of chopping season. And so a safety management system on any business in any agriculture operation should anticipate that fatigue could be an issue when driving machinery up on these silage confinement areas, these silage bunkers, or even when going to the face of the silage bunker and retrieving silage. Fatigue is an issue. You need to acknowledge it, understand that it could happen, especially during silage season or during night shifts among workers. So I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about some interventions that I recommend to dairy operations or other types of livestock operations that it involves silage storage. Never park vehicles or equipment near the face of the silage. And these areas should have very visible warning signs. And you can see a couple here about the bunker silage face, that it may collapse, danger, falling silage. I even recommend these mobile types of silage to be able to, 3 times the height of the silage pile. They should be way back from the face of the silage face. No human or foot past that unsafe distance. And these types of mobile signs can be used to indicate that safety zone. Here are some pictures that I've taken on a dairy farm years ago that shows this, how they have used these traffic cones with an orange chain, I guess, to indicate that distance that demarks 3 times the height of the silage pile. And they have a nice sign here, stay back, falling feed. And then here's another example over here of using markings in a traffic cone to indicate that safe distance. So I would like to mention that any silage safety management should be a part of the overall safety management program, a comprehensive safety management program. And what are those components? One being owner commitment. The owners of any type of agriculture operation should express and demonstrate that they are committed and they take very seriously worker safety. And they should be holding workers responsible for their own safety, but then also looking out for other workers on the job. They should be a part of the safety process. All workers should be part of the overall safety management program. But what does that mean? What does worker participation look like? Workers should be trained to identify hazards. Workers should be trained to possibly identify intervention strategies to eliminate or mitigate those hazards. At a minimum, workers should be informed and trained on how to report hazards. If a dairy ownership or any other type of livestock ownership does not know that a new hazard exists, how does the management know to address that new hazard that has been identified? So workers and their eyes and their ears should be key in identifying new safety risks and reporting them. That way that they can be expeditiously addressed and fixed. And the last component is worker training. I cannot stress how important it is to continuously provide training to all workers. And those trainings should be provided in a manner that a worker can understand. In agriculture, we oftentimes have non-English speaking workers. And so it is imperative that any employer in this sector provide training in a language that they understand. And I recommend that workers should provide evidence in some form that they understand what material has been presented to them, and then also maybe even provide a return demonstration as evidence of their comprehension. And then any worker training should be documented. Document all types of training for these workers. That is key. So, like I said, worker training should be presented in a manner that they can understand. Do not assume that workers understand the material that has been presented. Do not understand or do not assume that workers understand all of the different hazards associated with a silage storage facility. I believe, and it is my recommendation, that we in the safety, agriculture, health, and safety, our training should move beyond the how to do the job, and we should be emphasizing the whys. Why do we want you to know this material? Why do we want you doing this job in this manner, the way that we are telling you? It's because it's to protect your health and safety. There is a reason behind it. We need to go beyond the hows and start training them on the whys. When they understand the whys, they internalize the information and they start integrating that in their daily work behavior. Safety training needs to be continuous. Silage safety training needs to be continuous. We need to continue to reinforce the hazards associated with safety storage facilities. And that training should not be the same training. You should be providing the training or the reminders in different formats. That way that they can look at these silage facilities from different perspectives, and maybe in a different, when you present things in a different manner, they internalize it more. So like I mentioned, we need to have a mechanism for training effectiveness. How do you document that your workers understand the silage safety training that you have provided for them? It's just not a signature of attendance in a safety training session. We need to move beyond that. We need to have them at least provide a return demonstration or even talk or verbalize, okay, these are the things that I learned. Then you can document that they have at least expressed an understanding of the training material. Document, document, document. That is key. Outside regulatory parties will want to see any type of training that has been provided. Who attended? How was the training material presented? What subjects were presented? All of this does need to be documented. That is just good business practice. This does not apply only to agriculture. This applies to all industries across all sectors. But I do want to mention contractor silage safety. All contractor personnel, those who do not routinely work on who are on the farm, who are employed by the farm, should be aware of the safety requirements. This should be part of the agreement of allowing any contractor onto the farm. The contractor should understand that what the expectations are, what the safety rules and regulations are. And I would recommend that all contractors should sign off on the fact that they are attesting that they will comply with the premises safety rules and regulations. And the documentation of the provision of safety requirements and attestation, via signature of commitment to safety policies. That is key. So I know that I'm a little early, there 30 minutes, but I want to stop there and answer any questions that you might have for me on silage management, silage storage safety.
If anybody has questions that they want to ask verbally, just put in the chat that you want to be promoted to speaking, and then I can also do that as well. A quiet crowd today, it seems.
I went really fast there.
Hey, that's all right. Thank you so much, Dave. We really appreciate it. From your perspective, do you feel like there is... Oh, Brittany Clark has a question. It says, recommendations on guards for ground piles.
What type of guards or
It
how
looks like it.
high
I think
or
it would be all the above, it seems like. Just recommendations on what that would look like.
that would be a good question for an agriculture engineer, because I don't want to speak to how high those rails should go, given the stresses that would be placed on them by the amount of silage that they're holding in. I can see if I can find some recommendations, Brittany, and I can forward those on for you. But I do not have any specific recommendations or specs on those.
That would be great. If you share those with me, I'll definitely get them out to attendees.
But
Perfect. Just a quick question from my thoughts are, do you feel like there is an area of silage safety that is more critical than most when it comes to hazards that you see? I don't know if you went over that a little bit. Like, what's the most critical piece that a lot of people fail to follow?
yeah, the 2 points that I would identify would be silage avalanche. That is the big issue. And then the second would be tractor overturns when during harvest season when they're putting the silage inside the facility itself and packing it down because you're driving on an incline or decline. Those are the types of events or incidents that I read reports on or I hear or I'm told. But fatalities on these types of facilities happen often, unfortunately.
Very much so. Thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Dufresne? All right. Well, seeing none, if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to send them over to CLA and we can pass it along, or Dr. Dufresne also put up his information there at the end there for you all. With that, thank you so much, Dave. We really appreciate it. And thank you for your time today. And we'll have Diego, if you're ready to roll, I will have you start presenting as well. Thank you so much, Diego, for joining us. I'll get your slides brought up.
Do you want me to share my slides?
If you want to, that's totally great. Whatever way you would prefer.
Yeah, I will share. Right. Okay, perfect.
All right. Thank you, Diego. Everybody, this is Diego Manriquez with AgNext, and he's going to give us a really great update on heat illness and some prevention that we can always follow. Thanks, Diego.
Yes, thank you to the Colorado Livestock Association and also HICAS to inviting me to speak about this topic today. I'm really excited to share this with you because it also connects with my research interest, which is thermal stress in animals. So I hope I can share with you some important information. So to start this presentation, I wanted to make sure we understand a critical concept when we are talking about heat stress. And this concept is the core body temperature, which is basically the internal body temperature that is required for our body to function properly. is really important so that we can digest the food we eat properly and also use this energy properly. Our heart also needs a certain range of temperature to work. The brain is also very sensitive to changes in internal body temperature. So it's really important for the body to keep this temperature range in a controlled limit. The breathing function is also very sensitive. In fact, the body has many sensors across the airways that are continually sensing the body temperature and changing our breathing rate, for example. I wanted to point out that core body temperature is different to skin temperature. Skin temperature might be subject to bigger changes when it's exposed to either heat or cold. So it's important to make this distinction because in the event of heat or cold stress, what it could be most affected is the internal body temperature. So, as I said, this core body temperature is super important for the body to work, and it has a tight balance. We are probably familiar with the ranges accepted for a healthy person. As we can see here, it's not more than 3 Fahrenheit degrees or a Celsius degree for humans, and there is also ranges for animals. And since this temperature, this core body temperature is so important, the body has many mechanisms to help the organisms to regulate either heat or cold exposure. And we're going to talk a little bit how those regulation mechanisms are affected when we are exposed to heat stress. So you might be wondering how the body generates heat because, of course, our core body temperature tends to be higher to the temperature around us. So that means that the body is producing heat somehow. Well, this energy is mainly produced from the organ functionings doing their metabolisms, and this is called basal metabolism. Also, muscle activity, because muscles are burning energy, this reaction produces heat. So the more activity we do at work, the more heat we are producing. Also, there are some hormone regulations that actually help the body generate this heat, such as the thyroid hormones and adrenaline as well. When we are digesting our food, we also produce some portion of heat because of fermentation. And when we are actually using the energy produced from the food, we are also producing heat. We are going to see that in a second. This equation over here is not like a chemistry class or anything like that. I just wanted to point out that when we eat our food, in the process, oxygen is involved. That's why we need to breathe oxygen. And a product of this interaction is going to be CO2, water, which is different to the water intake we need. This is called metabolic water that is produced through this chemical reaction. Energy in a form of this molecule called ATP plus heat. So the fact that we are eating means that we are producing CO2, water, energy, and heat. Now, as I've said a little bit before, when we are using this energy, we produce heat. But also, I wanted to stop here in this part of the reaction of energy use. And this is because when we use this energy molecule called ATP, we need water in order to break this molecule down. And then when we break this molecule down, we create heat. But since water is needed for us to be able to use energy, it's very important that we consume water, especially when we are working outside in the field or in any place in the livestock operation. Because the more muscle activity we have, the more water is needed. And in the case of heat stress, the more heat is going to be produced by our bodies. Also, the use of energy could be beneficial in the case of cold stress because this muscle activity is going to generate heat. Actually, one of the responses against cold stress will be to start shivering. And what the body is trying to do there is just burn more energy, break down more ATP to produce, of course, the power needed for the energy plus heat. That is very important that we don't forget about the water intake besides the higher calorie intake when we are working in cold conditions. So we know already that our body produces its own heat, right? And of course, we are not an isolated entity. We are around of air, and the air has several conditions such as temperature, humidity, radiation, wind speed, and so forth. And here is important that we recognize several environmental conditions that can affect our body. So there is one definition regarding thermoneutral conditions, which is basically weather that feels comfortable. It's not too hot or too cold. Under these conditions, the transfer of temperature between our bodies and the environment is minimal. Almost no temperature is transferred. So our body is fine, is being able to maintain this core body temperature. And the methods that the body has to get rid of heat are working very efficiently. So there will be limited sweating, no shivering, and we will be able to breathe normally. However, there are some situations in which the environmental conditions are prone to cause heat stress. And in simple words, heat stress conditions is weather in which it's very hot and you are working hard and the body is not able to get rid of this heat that's being produced. And in this case, this temperature transfer is affected, and actually the environment is transferring more heat to the body, limiting the capacity of the body to release the heat that's being produced. And if you think that you are working on the field, you are producing more heat. So this is definitely going to affect the capacity of the body to get rid of this heat. An important environmental condition that affects your ability to dissipate this heat is solar radiation, because the more exposure to solar radiation is going to warm up your skin and it's going to limit the ability of the skin to exchange heat again. That's why shade helps a lot to the body to cool down. So it is a good recommendation to think about where our shade spots are. And if the workers are aware of these shade spots, if we need to create new shade spots, if this shade spot could be moved around the operation, especially during the hot season. Another important environmental condition to consider is humidity, because higher humidity is going to limit the efficiency of our sweat to dissipate heat. Another important consideration is ventilation and airflow that also helps this temperature exchange to be normalized. Another important part about high humidity is that makes the evaporation harder in your body. And since you will be sweating, which is a normal response of the body, you will also be losing water. So it's very important to stay hydrated. So far, we have discussed that temperature is important and also relative humidity are important. That's why it's important to complement these two parameters to be considered, to consider how dangerous the environmental conditions are in terms of heat stress. There are several heat indexes, but here I'm sharing the National Weather System heat index, that combines these two variables. And as you can see here, the index is extremely dependent of relative humidity. In temperatures as low as 80, could be considered as a cautious environment in which you have to be cautious about potential effects of heat on the workers. And you can see here that if we increase the temperature exposure, the risk for heat disorder is gonna increase depending on the humidity we are working around. So it is important to be aware of this type of information, not only take temperature as the only consideration to assess how difficult the conditions are going to be over the hot season. So I would recommend having, besides thermometers, I would recommend to have relative humidity sensors on the operations as well, so that we can have a better idea on the environmental conditions. If you are not able to access those devices, I am sharing here through this QR code a website of the National Weather Service in which you can locate the nearest weather station to your operation and kind of check historical data and also prediction for the closest area to your operation. So I think it's a good practice to get familiar with these resources. So now, why heat stress is an occupational issue? Well, historical data is important, and unfortunately, several heat-related fatalities have been documented. From data from the CDC, we see that agriculture workers, including crops and animal agriculture, also forestry and fishing workers are 35 times more likely to die from heat illness compared to other occupations. Another important part of this data is that age is not a risk factor. So younger workers are at the same risk level as older workers. So that's an important thing to consider. Also, as I was saying before, it's important to keep an eye on historical data, how hot the months of the years are. And here, this data present that 34% of the heat-related deaths occur in July in this part of the country. And also, most of the workers that have fallen ill, it has been between noon and 6 p.m. So these conditions of heat stress could affect workers pretty late in the afternoon. So it's important to keep in mind these time windows, so maybe we can plan ahead to see what are the activities we're gonna do during this period of the year, and maybe what are the activities we should avoid as well. If you are curious and you wanna know more about this data, you can use this QR here. That's gonna take you to the publication in which I collected this information. As I was saying, I tend to look a lot only to the temperature to say if it is too hot or too low, but humidity plays a big role. So from data of the CDC, it has been determined that temperature as low as 91%, the 50% of the fatalities. That means that 50% of the fatalities have occurred around 91 Fahrenheit degrees or at the heat index of 91. Also, fatalities have occurred at temperature as low as 83. So it's very important we don't just focus on the temperature, but also keep an eye on the humidity that workers are going to be exposed during shifts. More data says that 71% of the workers who have died from heat exposure died the day they got sick without any previous symptoms the days before. That means that heat illness is a fast-moving emergency. It could progress very quickly. So we need to think about this and hopefully have a heat illness preparedness plans in the operation. So it's important to recognize what are the symptoms of the heat illness. The heat illness exposure has been divided in severity levels from low, medium, and high severity. And these have distinct symptoms that we could train the workers to identify so they can know their body better. The less severity starts with a heat rash that affects the skin, but it could move quickly to heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and lately to a heat stroke that could cause death. So now I'm gonna share some of the characteristics of each of the severity levels of heat illness. So one of the first symptoms that you may observe in you or in other workers is a heat rash, which is characterized by red spots all over your body, and it could actually cause some blisters, and these are usually very, very itchy. Besides that, you may observe your breathing rate being more accelerated and kind of have this quick heat freeze. It's like you're really hot, but suddenly you feel like you are cold, and this is an indication that your body system is kind of getting unbalanced and fighting hard to get rid of this extra heat. Then this heat rash could, as I said, quickly evolve to heat cramps, in which uh, muscles could be a single muscle or all over your body start having cramps that may or not be painful or present muscle spasms. How to treat low severity heat exposure? Well, the treatment, I would say, makes a lot of sense. It's kind of common sense, but sometimes it's hard to find these resources. So I think it's good we follow our common sense and we are intentional in providing these resources for the workers. So in the case of a heat rash, the treatment basically is rest, look for shade, change pieces of clothing so that the skin can receive breeze and also dry out. And you need to drink water and electrolyte solutions. It's important that we provide water to the workers and also some electrolyte solution. And actually, it's pretty easy to make these electrolyte solutions. We could either use commercial hydration drinks such as the Gatorade, but it's important that we water this drink down because it may contain a lot of sugar. So if we use 1 part of Gatorade in 3 parts of water, that is gonna provide enough electrolytes if someone is having this heat rash or other mild symptoms of heat illness. There is also a way to prepare a homemade suero, and I'm gonna share the recipe in a little bit. Now, if you or a worker are experiencing heat cramps, the treatment also includes resting in the shade, drinking water, drinking electrolytes if possible. But this is an important point. If the heat cramps or the heat rash do not go away in an hour, it is recommended to look for medical attention because you may need more intense hydration in a way of an IV, possibly. Then the medium severity level include more severe symptoms compared to the low severity level. In this case, you may feel dizziness, like headache, fainting is possible. You may feel nauseous. There could be some changes in personality. So it's important that if we train the whole crew of workers so that they are able to identify these symptoms. Some heavy sweating could be identified, and also decreased urination. Here, I put here that you may feel increased thirst, and that's important symptom because when you feel thirsty, you are already 2 to 5% dehydrated. So the body is telling you that you need more water, but you are already suffering clinical dehydration. So it's important if we're gonna work on the field long hours to keep drinking water and not wait until you feel thirsty. And this is an important recommendation for managers to make to their workers. So the treatment for the medium severity level is again rest in a cooler area in the shade. That's why it's important that everyone knows where these shade spots are around the operation so that they can take promptly to a person suffering this heat illness as quickly as possible. It is also recommended to remove unnecessary clothing so that again the skin is able to transfer heat, right? Also encourage them to drink water, but in small sips. Remember that this person may be having problems to stay conscious and might be confused. So we don't want this person to shock if we give them too much water. And also importantly, do not leave this person alone. Now, the high severity level include heat exhaustion and also the heat stroke. Again, the behavior of this person might be compromised. The person might look confused. A loss of consciousness is possible, and it could quickly move from a heat cramp to a loss of consciousness. We could observe high body temperature, and eventually the person could stop sweating because the body is in a huge imbalance and all the heat regulation systems are just working bad or wrongly. So here I want to make the point that we don't have to wait until a worker has fainted to seek medical attention. If we are seeing a person with altered behavior that is confused, that is not able to elaborate ideas or is not able to stand properly, that's the time in which we need medical attention and then assist that person. For the high severity level, if a worker is fainted or unconscious, that's an emergency, so call 911. And it's important that while we are waiting for the paramedics to come, we need to move the worker to a shaded area. That's going to help. Also, if it is possible, we can consider putting the worker in cold water, if possible. Of course, taking care that the worker is not going to drown. And if it is not possible, we should put ice pack or any other cold sources around the body of this person, especially in the neck area, because that's the blood that's directly gonna go to the brain, to the thermal regulator areas of the brain. If we have a fan, we should use the fan to expose this person to the breeze. And of course, do not leave this person alone. Since we can help this person while we are waiting for help for the paramedics, it's important that all our team know where this equipment is, where the ice packs are, if we have a fan, where to take the person in case of an emergency. So communication is critical if we want to prevent a heat illness in our workers. The general rule for heat illness is that you know your body better than anyone. So if you are feeling any of these symptoms, either the sensation of extreme heat or these heat rashes in your skin, please stop, drink water, seek shade, and rest. You know your body and you should take care of your body as well. So now I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about hydration and electrolytes. And to me, this is especially important because I consider that agricultural workers are really athletes. And I will tell you why. So if you're a runner, you probably know that if you run a marathon, you burn between 2,500 and 3,000 calories. And there has been some studies that say that an agricultural worker doing a shift of 8 hours could burn more than 2,500 calories. Also, some reports from the Midwestern states have found that workers burn between 350 and 540 calories per hour. That could be up to 5,400 calories per day. And besides that, you're going to be exposed, especially in the hot season, to solar radiation and heat. So, if you consider this information, I think it would be fair to consider yourself as an athlete so that you need to prepare as the athletes do to perform well. And regarding that, staying hydrated and rested is super, super important. So my main message here is to prepare for work, especially if we know that's gonna be hot, if we know that we're gonna be working long hours. And this is especially important because we know that if a worker begins a day dehydrated, is gonna be less able to tolerate heat. And we know that if a worker is less able to tolerate heat, is gonna also be consuming more water and it's gonna be like a vicious circle. Also, we may have some workers coming from, warmer areas or tropical areas that seems to be more adapted to heat, and that's true. There are people that are more adapted to heat, and one of the ways they are more adapted to heat is that they sweat more. But if they are sweating more, they are also losing more water or in a higher rate than another person. So these people is also at higher risk to become dehydrated. So they also need to pay attention to that and drink water and stay hydrated. Besides water, you may also lose electrolytes, minerals, and salts. So that's also an important point to consider and to include in our hydration routine. So now, how can I check my hydration level? Well, I like to say that urine is an open book for pathology. It's very important to look at your urine and your feces as well, but now, since we are talking about heat stress, we're going to focus on urine because the color of the urine can tell you how well hydrated you are. And this is even more important because changes in urine happen before than you experience these heat stress symptoms. So it could be a good red flag to tell you that you need to drink more water or you are getting dehydrated. So as I said, urine is an important information. And I don't know how interactive this could be, but if you feel like you wanna guess which of these three samples is actually from a worker that is dehydrated, you can put in the chat 1, 2, or 3, depending on the color. I don't know if I can see the chat, but if anyone wants to kind of guess what you think about which sample is from a worker that is actually severely dehydrated, I would appreciate that. But I got a 3. Let's say who says 3? More 3s. Yeah, 3 looks like, yeah, something's going on with that worker, right? Lots of 3. Yeah, well, I truly appreciate your participation. And the answer is that all of them are severely dehydrated. And the key point here is that urine, besides being very sensitive to your hydration level, is also very sensitive to what you eat. It could change if you eat beets or if you drink coffee, it could change the color of your urine. So you have to keep that in mind that for example, this one, it could look a little bit lighter than these two, but it's still a strong yellow that indicates dehydration. So some information or some education materials have been developed by the National Center of Farm Worker Health that could be used as a guideline to inform workers during the shift, for example, to remind them to observe their urine. So what we want to see is this clear urine. That means that you are doing a good job drinking water. Actually, a good recommendation is to look at your urine before you leave your house for work to see how hydrated you are before you start your shift. Then, as the urine gets darker, you of course are getting more dehydrated. And this one is definitely a severe dehydration. Probably this person is having other problems because there might be some blood in this urine. But again, this is the urine we want to see while we are working. Thank you for the participation. I really appreciate it. If you want to access to the materials produced by the National Center for Farm Worker Health, you can scan this QR code, and this come in a format that you can print them out and put it in the locker rooms or in the break rooms for workers to see. Okay, so these are just general tips. It is recommended that you drink at least half of a liter of water before starting work. That would definitely help your body to deal with the heat and also with the activities you are going to do during the day. Because remember, if you are burning energy, you are also using water to burn that energy. So water is super important. Of course, it's gonna depend on the tasks you do on the farm, but it's recommended that workers drink between half of a liter to 2 to 3 liters of water per hour. But I understand that this might be hard because sometimes you don't want to drink too much water because you are gonna pee too often. But it's something that is recommended that you continuously drink water. This is the recipe I was talking about a few minutes ago, in which workers can do their own homemade suero if they don't want to drink too much Gatorade because of the cost or because it has too much sugar. It is really simple. You just put a quarter to half teaspoon of salt and then 1 tablespoon of sugar in a liter of water, stir up, and then have it ready to bring with you and drink it throughout the day. Or even you could prepare this and have it in the break rooms over the hot season so that it's accessible for the workers to drink. Also, it's important to encourage everyone to drink food that naturally carry electrolytes, such as bananas, watermelon, avocado, queso fresco, and dairy products in general. They are fantastic in providing electrolytes. So this could be a good idea for managers, owners to provide during the hot season in the break room, maybe have bananas available, watermelon, and dairy products so that the workers, besides the water, they also get the electrolytes they need. Okay, now I wanted to talk a little bit alcohol and coffee. And this is because these two drinks actually cause dehydration in the body. They affect the kidney and make the kidney to want to eliminate more water. So it's important over the hot season to try to limit the alcohol and caffeine consumption because it's going to get you dehydrated. I drink coffee and I like a cold beer after a long day of work. So I'm not saying you should quit on this, but for me, this information is to make you aware that if you are drinking alcohol or coffee, you should also drink probably a couple of glasses of water during you're drinking your coffee or a beer. It's important, especially if you're gonna work the day after. You should uh, drink a few glasses of water. Now, the exposure to heat stress also has some chronic effects, especially it affects the kidney. It may cause chronic kidney disease. Also, it could increase the risk for workers to have kidney stone. So it's really important that we stay hydrated. That's a way to help our kidneys to work properly, even during the hot season. So now, from the perspective of a manager or from an owner, I wanted to share some tips on how we can support our team to prevent heat-related illnesses. So there are four basic points here. And again, this may sound like a common sense, but we have to be intentional in providing this to our workforce. These 4 points are water, rest, shade, and easy access. This easy access is critical because we need to think about if workers are allowed to stop, if water is going to be accessible, if I have enough shade spots. Do new workers know where water is or shade is? It's important to be intentional to bring these 4 points up to everyone so we protect everyone in our operation. Uh, it's important to assess the current state of our operations in terms of these 4 points, as I was saying. It's important to ask ourselves if workers can access to these resources. Also think about how far they need to walk to reach this shade or water. It's important to think about if they can actually stop to drink water, or maybe the schedule is too tight and I'm not allowing them to take a break. Also, if we have crew leaders, is the crew leader encouraging workers to drink water? And also assess how our team culture is. Do the workers feel comfortable in asking for breaks, or is there any other culture in which they fear they're going to be teased or retaliated if they stop to drink water? I wanted to share this study to show you that actually providing water, rest, and shade increase the productivity. This was a scientific study performed with sugarcane workers in Central America, and the intervention was performed during the summer, and it was pretty simple. To the treated group of workers, they just provided 3 little bottles of water so that they could increase their water intake by 25%. Also, in the schedule of the workday, they allowed them to rest 25% of the time in shade. They had these mobile tents to provide shade, and also part of the intervention was to provide them with better tools. They observed them for a certain period of time, and they compare the control group of workers versus the intervened workers. And the results were very promising. Of course, it's going to depend of what we are doing in our operation, but in this specific study, they observed that heat stress symptoms were decreased, especially those that are related to medium to severe heat stress illness. Also, the productivity of the workers receiving this intervention increased quite a bit. They were able to increase in 2 tons the amount of harvest they collected in one day. So that was about 40% of increase. If you are curious to read this study, is pretty interesting. You can have access to it if you scan this QR code. It's pretty interesting. All right. Another idea you may consider is having the buddy system in which each worker is paired with a partner for mutual monitoring. This might be particularly relevant for crop farms or feed yards in which the workers have to walk long distances. It could be a good idea to have a buddy so that they monitor each other. Also, it's important to train them so that they are able to detect heat illness symptoms in their body so that they can help to get assistance quickly. Another idea is to have this row marking system, and this may apply more to crop farms, in which we provide workers with these flags, and we ask them to put the flag in the row or in the area they're going to be working. This would allow other people in the farm to know the last location of the workers, and if a worker has not reported in like certain period of time, we can go and find their last location in the farm. So pretty straightforward to implement, but it could have a huge impact in this rapid response in case of an emergency. This is more like a summary. Key points for workers: prepare for next day. Remember, you do a lot of physical work, so you need to prepare for that. Drink water before you feel thirsty. That's important. Um, Prefer food that will replace electrolytes over the hot season. Dairy products, very important. Legumes, fruits should be included in the diet. And for managers or owners, it might be a good idea to provide these foods in the break room so that they can access to this type of food. Also, don't forget, urine is an open book for pathology. It can tell you a lot about your body, and one of those things is hydration level. We want to see light yellow. If you see dark yellow, you need to drink more water. If you see your urine turning brown and you feel fatigue, you probably need to seek medical attention. And again, my message is to listen to your body. If you feel like you need a break, you need to rest, you need to drink water, please do so, because as we saw in the data, heat stress causes illness and may cause fatalities as well. Lastly, I wanted to share that OSHA is working in a new rule. This is not yet approved, but they are planning to have this new policy on heat injury and illness prevention, in which industries or operations in which workers are exposed to heat indexes of 80 or above for 15 minutes or longer are going to be subject to this new regulation. And what this new regulation entails basically is that the employer is going to be required to have a heat illness prevention plan in place, also develop some control heat hazards, such as these shade spots or how you are going to provide hydration, and also is going to require certain hours of training for the workers and the managers. So it's just a heads up that OSHA is working in this new rule. So if you want to keep learning more about heat illness prevention and get involved with us, we recently got funding from the Western Extension Risk Education Management Education to run this project, in which we want to enhance the training for the agricultural sector using the train the trainer method. we are going to be working with livestock and agricultural operations in Colorado. So if you want to participate and get the chance to receive training materials, complete training modules on heat illness prevention and treatment, also we are going to run a few workshops. And also, most importantly, if you want to be able to provide your feedback as we develop these new materials, this is a good opportunity for you. So for this project, we are going to be working with HICAS and my group in Colorado State University in AgNext. So if you would like to participate, please reach out to me or to Whitney Pennington or Morgan Bali as well. We will be happy to talk with you about this project and how to get involved. Before I finish my presentation, I wanted to acknowledge the National Center for Farm Worker Health for the information I use and also for the webinars we have put together on heat illness prevention, and then HICAS for collaborating with our group in this new project. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Diego. Does anybody have any questions for Diego? CLA submitted a letter in support of the project that Diego mentioned here at the end. So many of you might be getting reached out to on behalf of CLA for this project to help them bolster this wonderful training that they're wanting to provide to our industry, as this has become a very prevalent issue and also very statutorily prevalent as well for our members, such as yourselves. So look forward to having those emails heading your way as well here soon.
Yeah, I truly appreciate your support as well with that project. Thank you so much. It's really important for us to have the CLA support.
Of course, we enjoy supporting AgNext and High Costs. They are great partners to us as well. Well, with that, don't forget, everybody, if you don't have any questions, shoot them my way or Diego's way, and we'd be happy to answer those. Or if I don't know the answer, I'll be getting that to Diego. We really appreciate everybody attending today. We'll definitely end a little early today, which is great. That way you all can get back to your wonderful days. If you have not put your information down in the chat, make sure you do so that way I can attribute the credit to you. But again, thank you so much for joining us, Diego. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for attending the first quarter safety training. The next
Thank
one
you very much.
is going to be in person, more than likely, and in May. So keep a look at your emails as that information will be coming out here shortly. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.